Hi there. Welcome to live stream Yoga with Louise, tips and cues to keep you safe and strong on the mat. Today we are using a bar for all body conditioning. Rummage around in your kitchen. A broomstick works pretty well. Just remember to unscrew the brush from the handle. Alternatively, rummage around in your garage or your workroom. See if you can find a stick, a stake, maybe a trowel. Last resort, rush to the bedroom and remove the bar from your hanging closet. As always, play where you're comfortable, modify where you need to, and pause the stream should you need to take a rest at any time. You ready to play? Let's hit the mat. We're going to set up for today's class. Standing in parallel, set yourself up more or less in the middle of your mat. Make sure that your feet are stacking underneath your hips. Tuck your tailbone under, pull your belly button in, and hold the bar in both hands, floating it out in front of you. Focus on your shoulder blades. Push your shoulder blades back against an imaginary wall, and then disconnect from the wall. Holding the stick up nice and tall. Keep it at about shoulder height as you protract and retract through the shoulders. Keep that little tuck of your tailbone, keep the belly button pulled in. Let's do 3 more. And then keeping the stick extended out in front of you, start tracing a circular pattern clockwise. Keep your breathing long and lengthened. Keep your feet in parallel, keep your tailbone tucked under, belly button pulled in, and the spine as long as you can. Change it up and trace that little circular pattern in the opposite direction. Come to stillness. You're going to anchor the stick into the mat. You can place it maybe just off center to one side. Brace your hip, your hand on your opposite hip and bring the leg up to 90. Just give me a little release into the ankle joint. Maybe 10 revolutions in one direction, and then just change it up and warm up the joint in the opposite direction. Then still the ankle and start tracing a big circular pattern through the knee joint, just lubricating that joint. Then change it up and move in the opposite direction. Still the knee and bring it into the hip. Externally rotating, taking that knee out to the side and then in towards the midline. Shooting for roughly 10 revolutions, and then change it up and move in the opposite direction. Then think knee up, knee to the side, knee up, knee to the side. Sync your movements to your breath. Don't hold the breath. The last one, bring it down. Give the legs a little shake out. Let's rinse and repeat on the other side. Take your stick just off center on your stabilizing side and brace your hand on the opposite hip. Think knee to table and begin releasing into the ankle joint. 10 little circles in one direction, and then move in the opposite. Still the ankle and bring the movement into the knee. Keep that nice tall spine. Change it up halfway. Then still the knee and bring it into the hip. Externally rotating first. Once you've done 10, change it up and move in the opposite direction. Then think knee up, knee to the side, knee to nose, knee to the side. Shooting for roughly 10 repetitions. Then bring it back to center. Give me a small Pilates V on the mat this time. So heels together, toes softly splayed out to the side of the room, and anchor your stick in the middle of your body line, holding the hands one over the other, anchoring into the floor. You're going to just float up onto the toes and then reconnect the heels to the floor. Almost thinking of bobbing your head on the ceiling and then floating back down. Keep that little tuck of your tailbone and keep the belly button pulled in. Let's do 2 more. Then we're going to anchor the heels and just give me a small little bend through the knees. Look down as the knees are bending and check that your knees are not tracking further than the big toe. Just enough to wake up the entire chain of the leg. Then we'll combine those 2 movements together. Bring it up on the toes, bend the knees, up on the toes, down and bend. Up, down and bend. Let's do 4 more. And then we're going to change the foot set up slightly. You're going to bring it up onto the toes with the heels together. So front view, step up onto the toes and connect the 2 heels with the bar braced on the floor in front of you. You're going to give me a small little micro bend in the knees. Begin with a neutral spine position, so allowing for that S-curve shape in your spine. Give me a small bend in the knees, then tilt the pubic bone towards the 12 o'clock position, pause, bring it back to neutral. Bend a little bit further, tilt or scoop, back to neutral. Bend as low as you can, tilt, release, and then give me 10 little pulses up and down, holding onto that stick overhead or overhand as you gently pulse. Then float all the way up to your start position. Anchor the feet in V. Keep holding onto the stick with your left hand. Arc and frame on the right and just take a little overhead stretch, bumping your hip to the right as you stretch to the left. Come back to center and take the stretch to the other side, bumping your hip to the left as you arc and frame to the right. Come back to your start position on the mat. Step it up nice and high on the toes. Small little micro bend in the knees. Bend, scoop, pause, back to neutral. Bend, scoop, pause, back to neutral. Bend, scoop, pause, back to neutral. 10 little pulses up and down. Then float all the way up. Relax down onto the heels. Keep holding onto the stick with your left hand. Bump your hip to the right as you arc and frame overhead to the left. Ease your way back to center. Let's take it to the other side. Bump your hip to the left, arc and frame to the right. Ease your way back to center. Find your step up position, soft through the knees. Bend, scoop to pause. Nice little contraction through the core. Bring it back to neutral. Bend, scoop, pause. Back to neutral. Bend, scoop and pause. Back to neutral. 10 little pulses up and down. Float back up nice and high on the toes, and then relax the heels of your feet. Bump your hip to the right, arc and frame to the left. Ease your way back and take it to the other side. Bump to the left, arc and frame to the right. Let's do that one last time. Find your step up position. Bend the knees, tilt or scoop and hold. Hold that strong contraction through the inner thighs and the core. Release back to neutral. Bend a little bit further. Scoop and hold. Back to neutral. Bend. Scoop, hold. Back to neutral. 10 little pulses up and down. Knees softly tracking out. Peel all the way up. Relax down onto the heels. Bump your hip to the right. Arc and frame to the left. Peel back to center. Let's take it to the other side. Bump your hip to the left. Arc and frame. Come back to center and then open up your legs into a goddess line. If you find that the width of your mat is too narrow, you can change your orientation on the mat and you can think goddess line. You can softly splay your knees out to the side of the room, still anchoring with the stick in front of you. You're going to pulse up and down, trying to keep the knees softly stacking over the ankles. You're going to shoot for 10 pulses up and down. Let's do 2 more, and we're going to end low. You're going to come up onto the heel of 1 foot at a time. 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2. We're going to double up after the last one. On both heels, pulsing up and down. You're going to feel those inner thighs speaking to you in tongues. Try to keep a steady poker face. Let's do 5, 4, 3, 2. Connect both feet to the floor and then alternate side to side. One last time. Those legs are going to be screaming at you. Try to power through. 5, 4, 3, 2. Last one. Change your orientation on the mat. Heel toeing in and coming back to a parallel line with your feet stacking underneath your hips. Tuck your tailbone under, pull your belly button in, and you can anchor that stick just off your hip line to the right. Yep. All right. Brace your opposite hand on your hip. You're going to float the left leg out in front of you with the toe just a little bit wider than hip width distance apart. Keeping the leg long and lengthened, you're going to cross over the midline of the body and tap back out to the mat. Try to keep the limb nice and light as you cross over the midline of the body, anchoring into your stick on the right. Don't drive the movement from your foot. Think of tugging on a little piece of string through the belly button that connects your inner thigh, the top of your thigh, and your lower abs and your glutes to drive that movement. You're going to end high and pulse. 10, 8, 6, 4, 2. Last one. Float back to your start position and then take the leg out to the side of your left hip point. You're going to float up and down, up and down. Keeping that slight turnout position on your stabilizing leg. Trying not to lean too aggressively to the right. So as you push down into your bar, I want you to think of anchoring on the right. Shoulder, hip, knee, ankle. Let's do 2 more to the side. We're going to end high and float. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Bring it back down and take the toe just behind your hip line. We're going to work a little arabesque, focusing on the glutes. You're going to lift and lower. It's not a big movement, not a big lift off the floor. Think of drawing up from the kneecap along the quad, the hamstring, the glute, and the lower abs to make that leg float. Shoot for 10 floats, and then end high and give me 10 little pulses. Last one, come back to your V position and hold the bar in both hands, a little bit wider than shoulder width apart. You're going to give me a soft twisting motion to the left and to the right. If you find that keeping a narrow V stance on the legs puts too much torque on your lower back, you can open up the legs about hip width distance apart and just splay them softly out. Let's do 5, 4, 3, 2, last one. Float the stick overhead and just give me a side to side bump, bumping your hip to the right as you float overhead with both hands in the opposite direction, repeating it side to side. Let's do 6, 5, keep that little tuck of your tailbone, belly button pulled in. 3, 2, last one. Holding that small V position, you're going to start playing with some roll downs, and then as we get into the rhythm of the roll down, we'll start playing with it, and you always have the option to stay or play. Keeping that soft V position and the bar braced softly on the top of your thighs. Start with your chin line parallel to the floor. Take a big breath in. On an exhale, nod your chin to your chest. Hollow out your belly as you float the bar down to maybe tap the floor, and then brush it up along the length of your leg and come back to your start position. Use a whole exhalation to peel down. Take a recovery inhalation and then use a whole exhalation to peel back up. Brushing the bar along the tops of your legs, reaching down past your toes maybe to tap the floor, and then brushing back up to your start position. One more like this, then we're going to change the leg line and begin playing. The next time you come up, open up your feet into parallel so that the toes are looking to the front of the mat with your feet stacking underneath your hips. Nod your chin to your chest, roll down in parallel, and as you brush up, bend through the elbows and extend the bar overhead. Brush down over your chest, roll back down. Remember to sync your movement to your breath. Keep control of the roll down through your core and your spine, and use the same amount of control through the core and the spine to peel back up to your standing frame. Look for that inner thigh connection, that soft drawing up from your ankle bone along the inseam of the leg, feeding through the pelvic floor and extending all the way up towards your chest bone. You're either going to stay here or you're going to play. The next time you roll down, come up onto the haunches and float the bar out in front at shoulder height. Then peel back up. As you come overhead, bring it up onto the tips of your toes. Roll back down. Come up nice and high on the haunches, extending the bar out in front, maybe reaching with your fingertips and pinching the bar between the thumb and the forefinger. Then rolling back up. As the bar reaches overhead, reach onto your tippy toes and tap the ceiling. Come down. As you roll down onto the haunches, reaching long and lengthened with the bar in front of you. Drop down, peel back up. As you roll up, come up onto your tippy toes and reach the bar overhead. Find a steady rhythm of your own, playing where you're comfortable. Looking for that balance, that control, that fluidity of movement as you're playing on the mat. Always controlling through the core. Remember, the core is the center of your universe and controls all of your movements on the mat. Let's do one more. Last one. The next time you roll up from your haunch position, you're going to come back into your little Pilates V, and you're going to anchor your stick on the left, bracing your right hand on your right hip. You're going to float the right leg out so that the toe is just a little bit wider than your hip. Keeping that leg long and lengthened, you're going to cross over the midline of the body and tap back out. Keep long and lengthened through the spine. Drive the movement by drawing up along the powerhouse. So all the movement happening above the knee line and below your belly button line. Once you've done 10 lifts, you're going to end high and give me 10 soft pulses. 7, 5, 3, 2, 1. Come back to your tap out position and then take the foot out to the side of your right hip. Lifting and lowering. Remember, it's not a big movement and you're focusing on that stack on your stabilizing side. So on the left side, you're thinking of stacking shoulder over hip, hip over knee, knee over ankle. Once you've done 10 lifts, you're going to end high and pulse. 10, 8, 6, 4, 2, 1. Tap back out to the mat and draw the leg behind you, just off center on the hip line. You're going to lift and lower, drawing up from the kneecap along the quad, the hamstring, the glute, and the lower abs to make that lift happen. Keep your breathing long and lengthened. Once you've done 10 lifts, we're going to pulse. 10, 8, 6, 4, 2, 1. Float back to your V position on the mat. Extend the bar long and lengthened out in front of you, holding it a little bit wider than shoulder width apart. You're going to softly twist side to side. Exhaling on the twist and then inhaling as you float back to center. Two more. Then we're going to float the stick overhead and take that side to side stretch. Floating the stick overhead, bumping into your right hip as you float to the left, and then take it to the other side. So the hip is bumping to one direction and you floating the hands and the stick in the opposite direction. Keeping that soft turnout position on the feet, drawing up softly along the inner thighs and feeling that beautiful little stretch and control through the abs. Let's do 5, 4, 3, 2, last one. We're going to keep the turnout position and begin our roll downs, dropping the bar to the top of your thighs. Nod your chin to your chest, peel down and back up, brushing the stick or your bar softly along the top of your thighs and starting to sync your movement to your breath. stay here or begin moving your foot line into parallel. Nod your chin to your chest, peel down. And as you float back up, float your bar overhead. 9. 8. 7. 6. Control through the core, control through the inner thighs. You're either going to stay here or you're going to start adding your haunch line. The next time you come down, float onto the haunches and float the stick out in front. As you peel back up to start and float the stick overhead, come onto the tips of your toes. Find a steady rhythm of your own. I'm setting a moderate pace, but you're more than welcome to speed up your movement or slow your movement down depending on how your body is feeling today. Find a steady rhythm of your own, always working with control through the core and looking for that flowing breath pattern to not only set your pace, but to help you sync your movement and your breath so that you start moving with graceful fluidity as you're playing on the mat. Let's do 3 more, and then we'll change our orientation on the mat and we will set up a seated frame on the mat. Last one, we'll use the little haunch line to set up our seat. Maybe holding that haunch. If you're feeling good, give me a little twist to each side. Then take a seat on the mat. And in a moment, we are going to roll it down. So if you know you are going to need a little bit of support for your lower back, maybe take a little hand towel, roll it up into a sausage, and place it more or less where you're going to need support when you come into your roll down. We're going to start seated up nice and tall and open up your legs into a small V. I'd say maybe just a little bit wider than hip width distance apart. You're going to hold your bar in both hands and then float it overhead. Sitting up nice and tall, making sure you've got your shoulders stacking over your hips. You're going to brush the stick down along your chest and then over the top of your thighs, reaching over your toes and then retrace back to your start position. Brushing down your chest, over the top of your thighs and reaching long and lengthened in front of you. Syncing your movement to your breath. Maybe taking a nice little exhale as you lean forward and then inhaling as you float up to the ceiling. Keep your belly button softly pulled into center the whole time that you're playing. Almost working with a rowing-like motion. Let's do 2 more. Last one. We're going to keep that V position on the legs and you're going to float the bar out in front at shoulder height. You're going to give me a double pulse to the left, come back, double pulse to the right. 9. 8. As you find a rhythm of your own, try to gauge what you're doing with your trunk. Try not to lean off the center line as you pulse. So try to keep that high seat by bracing softly into your feet, using that drawing up along your inner thighs and that really strong pull up from your pelvic floor towards your breast line to keep your high seat on the mat, almost as if you were a marionette and somebody was pulling the crown of your head up to the ceiling. Let's do 5, 4, 3, 2, last one. We're going to change it up and we're going to work a modified saw line. You might want to open up your feet a little bit wider, maybe have them a little bit wider than mat width distance apart. Start with the stick at about chest height. You're going to rotate to look over your left foot and then reach and pulse 3 times as if you were drawing the stick over your toe. Draw back to center, rotate to the right, reach and pulse. Bring it back. So a little rotation to the left and then pulse 3 times. Draw back to center first, rotate to the right, and then pulse 3 times. Find a steady rhythm of your own. Once again, I'm setting a moderate pace, but you're more than welcome to speed it up or to slow it down. Let's do 2 more to each side, then we'll change our leg line on the mat. Last one. Coming back to center, bend the knees, connect the soles of the feet to the mat, and dip your weight just off the center line, floating your legs into a little boat hold, maybe extending the bar out in front of you, hands just a little bit wider than shoulder width apart. Draw up along the inner thighs, pull up really strongly from the pelvic floor towards the waistline to hold that almost L shape on your back as if you had reclined the seat in your car. Then anchor your feet into the mat, push the bar into your shins, push down into the bar and lengthen through your spine, taking a couple of long recovery breaths here, trying to just give me the longest spine that you can and pulling actively into the bar. So you're pulling the bar into your shin bone and you're resisting with the shin bones. Then float the bar out in front, come back into your L lean and give me a little modified Russian twist side to side, almost as if you were tapping the edge of your stick to the mat, side to side. You could almost think of a rowing-like motion in a canoe, yeah? 6, 5, 4, 3. Keep that L shape through your spine. Last one. We're going to come back into recovery, bracing the stick or the bar into your shin. So pulling, giving me a soft little bend through the elbows, lengthening through your spine and taking a couple of deep recovery breaths. Then come back into your boat hold, either floating the legs into table or giving me a full extension and reaching long and lengthened through the arms and the feet. Hold for 10, 8, 6, 4, 2, 1. Float softly back down to the mat. We're going to work a little C curve. Open up your feet about hip width distance apart, bracing your feet softly into the mat. Nod your chin to your chest, round out in C curve, holding that almost scooped frame through your belly, and then peel back up to your start position. Scooped around, Peel back up. As you scoop and round out, I want you to anchor through your feet, draw up along the inner thighs, really strongly from the pelvic floor towards your breast line, and then come back to neutral. You're going to use the C curve to start peeling all the way down, floating your stick overhead, and then brushing back up to your start position, almost brushing the stick over the head, over the top of your trunk, and then over the top of your knees, almost just brushing it softly along the body as you roll up and down. Find a steady rhythm of your own. If you are using padding behind you, make sure that that padding is where you're going to need it, in that little crook of the lower back. Make sure that you are peeling down with control through the inner thighs and the core, and that you're not throwing the shoulder weight up and down to get yourself onto the mat and off the mat. Keep your gaze inward towards your belly button. Let's do 2 more. And then you're going to end on the back. And as you complete your last one, just slip your padding out and place it one side. We're going to come into a bridge hold. Bend the knees, connect the soles of the feet to the mat. Make sure that the feet are not too far away from you. So scooch them in closer towards your bum line. Extend the bar out in front of you, and then just protract and retract through the shoulders just a few times, and then stop with the shoulders anchored or weighted into the mat, and keep that heavy weightedness into the mat, holding the bar steady overhead as we come into our bridge line. Begin in neutral spine with a little space between your lower back and the mat. Anchor softly through the feet as you tilt the pelvis to the 12 o'clock position, imprinting your lower back into the mat, and then begin disconnecting the vertebra one at a time from the mat as you peel up nice and high into a bridge line, piking the hips up nice and high towards the ceiling and holding that overhead position with the bar. Hold for 10 steady counts once you've reached the apex of your bridge, making sure that you're not Ving your knees out. Keeping your feet and your knees hip-width distance apart, using your quads, your glutes, your hamstrings. Then soften through the legs and the glutes, peel down really slowly, keeping the bar overhead as you feel each little nodule of the spine rounding out and hollowing out your belly before you bring your spine back to neutral and find your original position on the mat. Let's do that one more time. Tilt to scoop. Peel up with control, keeping that bar floating overhead the whole time with the shoulder blades nice and heavy into the mat. Keep your chin tucked towards the chest and try not to look to the side of the room. When you're ready to come down, keep that bar floating overhead and focus on the control through the spine and the core as you reconnect your body to the mat. Then bend through the elbows and relax the elbows to the floor, floating the bar just above your chest line. We're going to work a modified crunch line. Keep your bridge set up on the feet. Start with your chin line soft. Nod your chin to your chest. Scoop, tilt, peel up, floating the bar as if you wanted to reach past your knees, and then peel back to your start position. So you're giving me a little tilt to the 12 o'clock position. You're imprinting your lower back. You're floating way off the shoulders, finding that strong contraction through the core, and then floating back to your start position. Shoot for between 5 and 10 strong repetitions. Exhaling as you scoop up and hold. And then inhaling to float back down. Last one, float back down. Float the stick overhead, weight your shoulder blades into the mat and draw your legs up into table. Keeping your feet and your knees softly clipped together. We're going to tick-tock just off center to the left. Pause. Bring it back. Just off center to the right. Pause. Bring it back. You're going to give me 4 more repetitions. Don't rush the movement. Pause and hold as you come off the center line, looking for that little pull from your hip bone, flaring up this along the side of your ribs. Sync your movement to your breath. Keep your shoulder blades heavy into the mat and keep the bar floating softly overhead. Last one. From here, we're going to work a modified one-legged roll-up. You're going to anchor your left foot into the mat and keep your right leg in table. Bar stays floating overhead. You're going to nod your chin to your chest, peel up, extending the right leg, and then peel back down, bending the leg as you reconnect to the mat. You're going to reach long and lengthened through your right toes, almost pushing the bar away from you and reaching long and lengthened through your fingertips, almost pinching the bar between your thumb and your index finger. Last one. And you can place your padding underneath the lower back if you need it. Come back to your start position on the mat, anchor your elbows into the mat, and give me some slow crunches. Peeling up to reach the bar over your knees, and then relaxing the elbows back on the floor. Anchor through your feet as you reach through. Scoop to tilt, imprinting your lower back into the mat, peeling way up off the shoulders, looking for that contraction through the inner thighs and the core. Let's do one more, then we'll come into our tick-tock position. Float the bar overhead, weight your shoulders into the mat, and draw your legs up into table. Keeping the feet and the knees softly clipped together. Tick just off center to one side. Inhale, bring it back. Take it off center to the other side. As you find your rhythm, make sure that you're keeping the bar floating steady overhead. So the shape of the hands and the shoulders does not change. We're working into the oblique area, getting that nice little V definition through the trunk. Keep your chin looking straight up to the ceiling. All right, let's change it up. Anchor your right foot into the mat. One-legged roll-up, reaching long and lengthened, and then bending the knee back into table as you roll back down. You can place a little bit of padding underneath the lower back if you need it. Shooting for between 5 and 10 repetitions. Rather give me 2 solid and take a rest than try to power through 10 and lose form. You're going to give me one more. We're going to end high. And we're going to change our orientation on the mat, opening up into a wide seated straddle with the legs as wide as you can comfortably manage. Make sure that you're not hanging off your tailbone, so tilt your pubic bone to the 6 o'clock position. If you need to, you can place a yoga block just underneath your bum so that you can tilt beautifully to the 6 o'clock position. You're going to extend the bar out in front of you, Hands are a little bit wider than shoulder width apart, and you're bracing actively into your feet the whole time that we're playing. You're going to take a big breath in to prepare, and you're going to push the stick away from you, trying to frame your head between the two arms and looking down towards the floor, leaning as far forward as you can, almost as if you were using the stick to push the wall in front of you away from you. Hold that stretch for at least 10 to 15 counts, trying to frame the ears on either side. Keep the belly button firmly pulled in to center. Peel back and take a little off-center stretch to the right. So pivot to the right, reach the stick out in front of you, frame the ears on either side, looking down towards your kneecap, belly button firmly pulled into center, and hold the stretch. Brace actively into your feet and try to relax the kneecaps so that you're releasing that little tension spot behind the knee. Draw back. Let's take it off center to the left. Holding that stretch. Look down towards your kneecap. Anchor into both feet. Draw up along the inner thighs. Try to relax the kneecaps down into the mat. Pull back and let's do one more to the center. Hold that stretch, bracing into the feet. Peel back to center and tuck into a little mermaid frame, bending the right leg, knee and the ankle in a straight line, and then take the knee of the left leg and feed it into the arch of the right foot. Float the stick overhead, and then give me a nice overhead arc, as if you wanted to tap the end of the stick to that floating left foot. Hold the stretch. Almost rotating if you can and peeking gently up to the ceiling. Come back to center, extend the bar out in front. Big breath in, take one stretch to the middle, framing the ears on either side, bracing strongly into your feet, holding for 10 seconds. Peel back up to center. Let's take an offset stretch to the left. Framing the ears on either side, bracing into the feet, drawing up along the inner thighs, relaxing the back of the kneecaps. Peel back to center, rotate slightly off center to the right, and take the stretch to the right. 10, 8, 6, 4, 2, 1. Peel back to center. One last stretch to the middle, extending the stick away, framing the head on either side, almost pulling the stick away with both hands. So you're pulling away from the center line with the hands. Peel back to center, tuck into your mermaid frame on the left, and then drop to the right, almost as if you wanted to use the edge of your bar to tap that right back foot, maybe gently arcing to look overhead. Ease your way back to center. Bend the knees. Connect the soles of the feet to the mat. And brace the bar on your shins. Pull the bar into your shins and lengthen, almost hollowing out your spine and looking up towards the ceiling in a cow-like frame. And then exhale to round out in a cat-like frame. So you're playing with a seated cat-cow, arcing and rounding out through the spine, using it as active recovery. Exhaling as you round out in that cat shape. Inhaling as you pull through neutral, arcing slightly through the spine to peek up to the ceiling. Let's do 2 more. As you complete the last one, end off today's class by just relaxing your shoulders away from your ears and nodding your chin softly towards your chest. Thank you so much for coming out and playing with me today. I hope you enjoyed today's barre class. Remember to give me a thumbs up if you did enjoy. Shoot me your comments and your feedback. And remember to subscribe with your notifications on. I shall see you all for yoga on the mat tomorrow. Till then, keep it light.